this segment, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the data entry for the decision aid. This is an extremely complicated model, much more complicated than most of the decision aids we've developed for Farm Bill applications in the past. The very first thing you need to know is before you start, there's a information requirements set of sheets on our website you probably need to download and go through and maybe fill out, or at least get that information at hand before you start. I'm going to talk a little bit about the forms. The first form you're going to want to find is an FSA form that has your bases and yields. Most people would refer to the FSA 156 EZ form, and as you can see on the screen, I've got a mock-up of one of a fake farm number 1234, and it has 3 crops on it. Obviously, the information you're going to be pulling from it is below the little purple arrow. The crops on this farm are wheat, corn, and grain sorghum, and the information you're going to be using off this form is either the red circle or the blue circle, either the base acres for each of those crops, or the CC yield, or countercyclical payment yield, as well. So on that form, for each of your farm numbers, you're going to have a form, and you're going to need that information. Another piece of information you're going to need is crop insurance information to get your yields off of it, and your APH. Well, one of the things that I'm going to be going through just briefly is that crop insurance forms are not necessarily, they don't just sync up perfectly with FSA farm numbers. I might go into that in great detail. But looking at this, what we're looking at here is an approved APH production yield report. I've also seen forms that would be called production yield reporting form. What we need is something where you've reported your yields to your crop insurance agent over time. In the on this form, you're going to see basically in the blue circle, it says the APH yield, and that's important. That's the yield that we will use most likely. To the left of that column is it says yield, and it says an A right next to it, and that A refers to actual. And the main thing is for the crop insurance decisions in this farm bill. Again, we've gone through this many times, but FSA decisions are there's a couple of those, but interrelated with it is the fact that some of your crop insurance could change. Because of that fact, you've got to consider the information that comes from the Farm Service Agency as well as the information that comes from Risk Management Agency. When we ask for yields, your historical yields, if you go to one of these forms, you'll be pulling the actual yield. If it doesn't have an A next to it, that is not an you will not be using that yield. I'm going to go through a couple of examples of how these forms don't match, and then the next time I'm going to be visiting with you about how you would put these specific situations in our decision aid. So in terms of inputting your data, I've got a number of examples that I want to go through with you pretty quickly, just to show you how there are differences, and this is where the difficulty becomes. I know I said this is a very difficult set of decisions, and actually the decision aid will help you walk through those quite easily if you get your data entered correctly. So let's go with the simplest cases I have on the diagram. Basically, on the FSA 156 EZ, you have that farm number, and that farm would have wheat, corn, and grain sorghum. In the most simple case, you would have an insurance form that would have dryland wheat on it, dryland corn on it, dryland grain sorghum on it. The difference being, FSA has generic wheat, corn, grain, sorghum. RMA, the crop insurance forms are going to be crop and then practice, either dryland or irrigated specific. So in this particular case, this person, if you had this type of a situation, you could sit down with the decision aid and go straight to it, and there's not much complication. So again, I don't want to scare anybody off. If you had this situation, you could do this quite easily. Another common case is where you have that same one farm number with wheat, corn, and grain sorghum on it. But also very common is you're going to have On your crop insurance records, you would have dryland wheat, dryland corn unit 1, dryland corn unit 2, or dryland grain sorghum on the same farm number. So what you're going to be doing there is you would have the FSA number. Say you have 500 acres of corn. That 500 acres of corn might be on 2 different insurance units, and you're going to have to put the data in accordingly, because you're not only going to want to answer, if you use this decision aid, you're not only going to want to answer the decisions you need to make with FSA, but you're also going to want to analyze SCO crop insurance and every other crop insurance alternative. And so you need to have your operation put in where it's basically more specific than just what is on a FSA form. Another common case is where you have that same wheat, grain, sorghum, and this time you have oats. And that means you have crop base acres and yields. You have been historically at one point in your farming operation, you have had oats. Maybe you haven't had oats in 20 years, but you still have a base acres and a yield associated with it. So when it goes time to look at crop insurance information, you're not going to have information for a crop you're not currently farming. That is very common, and what you need to know is you still put in oats as a crop in this decision aid, because it has base acres that will be either left with oats or be reallocated to another crop that you are farming now. So it's a very common case, and we're going to need to show you how to put the data in accordingly. The next case, I would call it less common. You have a situation where you have 2 FSA farm numbers, and I have here 1111 and 2222, 2 different farm numbers. The first farm has wheat and corn, the second farm has grain, sorghum, and wheat. On the crop insurance side, your information would not necessarily be broken out by farm number. You could have your information is all the dryland wheat you have. It's on 2 different farm numbers, but you have one set of information on the production yield report. You can see how that would track, and you can see where it might cause a little bit of issue. Not a problem. You just need to know what to do, and I need to tell you how to do that. The last case I'm going to talk about is less common as well, and this is a situation where, but I guess I call it less common, but it's becoming more and more common. And it is a situation where you are producing a crop now that you have no farm program base on, or you don't have no history with FSA on. You will be keeping track of that as a separate crop. It just, when it comes time and asks you on the form to put in your historical base and your CC yield, there's not going to be any information entered there. So I just wanted to give you today, I wanted to give you an idea of some of the reasons why we're saying this is a lot more complicated. It's truly not that complicated, as long as you set the data up and you enter it where it will be entered into the model to be able to provide you the answers to the questions you need answered. Until next time, thank you very much.